a game theory Bitcoin, let's say you fork. Well, Bitcoin's not, you wouldn't keep the Bitcoin name, that's for sure, because it's not, nothing would accept the fork. That's one of its features is, you never fork the chain. That's how 90% of the hash rate lost in the Bitcoin Cash battle, because the exchanges all decided to keep Bitcoin as the Bitcoin, and Bitcoin Cash had the fork, and no one accepted the fork. Even though that was where most of the hash rate wanted to go. But let's game theory this. You fork Bitcoin, okay, so what? Because what is it? If we're being nakedly honest, what is Bitcoin? It's a liquidity layer for very rich people, eventually governments and elites. It's going to be a settlement layer. The SWIFT system was weaponized. That was going to be obvious. That was obvious it was going to happen because it was centralized, right? So if you're the elites, you need a playground where no one controls it, but only the elites can play in it. That makes sense, because that's a promise that all of them can come to. So if you fork Bitcoin, you don't have the liquidity. So it's like, what can Bitcoin do? Like, you need two things for a network. You need either liquidity, which is going to come from some source, either a good source or a bad source. They're all bad sources, so either a centralized source or non-centralized source. But you need liquidity, or a network effect and use case. Bitcoin's use case is its liquidity.
Money, bro.
That's what it is. It's liquid. You can change it out, and it can't be seized, right? So that's a very awesome use case. But that's for a very small percentage of the world. It's for the rich people. Most of the world needs stable, no fee, and they just need a way to like store in the strongest currency at the time without getting wrecked by their current currency. Right, so you need a use case and a network effect. So you either have liquidity or use case network effect. Hive went the use case network effect route, which will eventually gain liquidity because of its use case. So I mean, it's like you fork Bitcoin, you're just shooting yourself in the foot, because the elites aren't going to play with your chain. And if you have a volatile asset that has no liquidity and no use case because the fees and all that, I mean, even if they tried to go big block, you might as well go Bitcoin Cash or Bitcoin SV. Why not? We already know that's the same route as like a Solana. It's a fat node. You shouldn't store everything on chain, like especially JPEGs and images and all that. And audio files, that's a very bad idea to store on the layer one. Bitcoin has done it in an elegant, weird way. It's kind of like Hive-esque, where it's like, I don't know who set the parameter, if they even meant to, but like the ability to store just a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of like an audio file or like a JPEG. And now you can make it art, and you can kind of stunt, and you have like a real NFT sort of deal. I thought that was cool. But regardless, the fees are going to go up on Bitcoin. They have to in game theory, or there's no security for the network. So forking Bitcoin is useless. And Bitcoin really doesn't have a use case outside of liquidity and not being censored, which is huge. It's a badass use case, don't get me wrong. But Hive has the ability to do that, plus add a stable coin, feeless transfers, value for value opportunities, the ability to preserve your form, long form. I can go on and on about what Hive does, but the use cases is there for Hive. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. It's very interesting actually, because most of the world looks at it as a store of value, and to some extent it is, but it's not a store of value for everybody. That's for sure. Maybe a store of value can't be for everybody.
For people who have money that can play with, but for most people, they cannot have volatility at all. And that's like 90% of the world at this point, and growing.
It's certainly a liquidity layer for the wealthy. That's what it's become. And I don't think the world's quite come to terms with that yet. And again, that's something we've been saying for a moment. And that's it. Like, if you can then have a separate layer that operates in a more lightweight way, that is actually decentralized, with no CEO, no pre-mine, no venture capital behind it, that's neutral, that allows you to transact for free. So now you can do a wrap from Bitcoin through a decentralized bridge onto a massive multi-sig on the other side, and then transact with that Bitcoin for zero fees, which is what we currently have with BSC. Then you are able to provide a liquidity layer for the people. I look forward to that happening, regardless of what type of forking situation.
Yeah, that's the one thing that's good about Bitcoin, is the fact that you can attach to it. I can't attach to Chase Bank. It's like I can't just build a layer and a bridge into Chase Bank and start using it. But with Bitcoin, I can. So Bitcoin is Trojan horse. It's done the work that Hive could never, ever be accepted for, because nobody wants, like, Hive destroys all the middlemen. So nobody wants it in terms of the centralized people because it cripples them. You know, it's like freedom of speech, zero fee transfers. It's like trying to sell water, you know, or air. But what can you do? There's like, how do you monetize that? High fees, of course you can monetize push to a centralized layer 2. But that's a great thing for us because guess what? We can just attach to Bitcoin. So Bitcoin's liquidity is, if you look at it in that way, it's like a bank you can just build a bridge to, and you don't have to ask for permission. So that's huge, regardless. And I always do believe Bitcoin will be quote unquote decentralized and censorship resistant to a great extent. Now, it might be a handful of cabals that run it, but you know, I don't ever believe one is going to be able to control and dominate the network. Therefore, you will have a censorship resistant liquidity layer that you can tap into, which is, and then you go to any fiat you want. So, you know, we went the practical route. You know, like I used to think, oh, exchanges. Now it's like, no, let's get the Bitcoin, and then you can sell your Bitcoin on any exchange you want. Why not? You know, piggyback off of Bitcoin success. Why do we have to do all, or even try? And it's out of our hands anyway. We couldn't, you know, you can't force it into reality.